Welcome to my channel. In today's video, we're going to dive right in, so make sure to watch until the end. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and share this video with your friends. Thanks for watching, and let's get started. The 1965 United States quarter dollar is a historically significant piece of American coinage, as it represents one of the most pivotal transitions in the history of U.S. money. Until 1964, quarters were composed of 90% silver and 10% copper, but rising silver prices and widespread hoarding of silver coinage during the early 1960s created severe shortages in circulation. To solve this crisis, Congress passed the Coinage Act of 1965, which permanently removed silver from dimes and quarters, replacing it with a new copper-nickel-clad composition. The 1965 Washington quarter was the very first year of this new standard, making it a landmark issue in U.S. numismatics. On the obverse, the coin carries a classic portrait of George Washington, first introduced on the quarter in 1932 for the bicentennial of his birth. This portrait was designed by sculptor John Flanagan, based on a famous bust of Washington by Jean-Antoine Houdon. Washington faces left, his profile filling the center of the coin, a dignified image meant to honor his role as a father of the nation. Above his head arcs the word liberty, the most essential American principle, and to the left of his portrait, in smaller but distinct lettering, appears the national motto, "In God We Trust." At the bottom of the obverse is a date 1965, indicating the year of issue. Notably, there is no mint mark on any 1965 quarter, regardless of whether it was struck in Philadelphia or Denver. This was due to a temporary policy instituted by the mint between 1965 and 1967 to discourage hoarding and speculation during the coin shortage, making the 1965 quarter one of only a few U.S. coin issues in history to completely omit mint marks. The reverse design of the coin continues with John Flanagan's heraldic eagle, a bold and symbolic emblem of national power. The eagle is shown with wings spread wide, perched atop a bundle of arrows to symbolize military readiness and the strength of the nation's defenses. Beneath the arrows rests an olive branch, an ancient symbol of peace, suggesting that while the United States is prepared to defend itself, its ultimate goal is the pursuit of peace. This blend of imagery reflects both America's identity and its global position during the Cold War era of the 1960s. Around the eagle, the inscriptions reinforce the coin's legitimacy and national identity. United States of America curves across the upper rim, while directly beneath it appears the Latin motto E pluribus unum, meaning out of many, one. At the bottom of the reverse is a denomination, quarter dollar, clearly marking its value for circulation. The physical specifications of the 1965 quarter reflect its landmark role in U.S. monetary history. Unlike its 1964 predecessor, which was struck in silver, the 1965 quarter is composed of copper-nickel-clad, outer layers of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core. This gave the coin its familiar silvery appearance but eliminated its intrinsic silver content, which was a driving factor behind hoarding. The clad composition also allowed the mint to strike quarters more economically and in higher volume to meet the demands of circulation. The coin weighs 5.67 grams, has a diameter of 24.3 millimeters, and features a reeded edge, a traditional element originally meant to prevent clipping or shaving of precious metals. The shift from silver to clad was met with resistance by some collectors and the public, who lamented the loss of real money, but the decision proved necessary for the stability of the nation's circulating coinage. The mintage of the 1965 quarter was enormous, with well over 1.8 billion pieces struck, the highest of any single-year quarter up to that point. This massive output was part of the mint's effort to flood the economy with clad coinage and relieve the coin shortages that had crippled commerce in the early 1960s. The mint operated around the clock to produce these new quarters, and as a result, the 1965 quarter remains one of the most common dates in the Washington quarter series. It is often found today in circulation, though most surviving examples show heavy wear from decades of use, with worn details on Washington's hair, flattened eagle feathers, and loss of mint luster. From a collecting standpoint, the 1965 quarter is not rare, but it is historically important. In circulated condition, it is worth only face value, 25 cents, due to the huge mintage and lack of silver. However, collectors often seek high-grade uncirculated examples with strong luster and sharp strikes, as these can command modest premiums, especially in grades of mint state 66 and above. Coins with exceptional eye appeal or unusual toning are more desirable. Additionally, the 1965 quarter is known to have transitional errors, the most famous being rare examples struck accidentally on leftover 90% silver planches intended for 1964 quarters. These error coins are highly sought after and can be worth thousands of dollars depending on condition, since they represent a crossover between the silver and clad eras. The historical context of the 1965 quarter is also noteworthy. It was struck during a time of economic and political change in the United States, as the nation grappled with inflation, social movements, and the Vietnam War. The removal of silver from coinage marked the end of an era when U.S. circulating coins had intrinsic value tied to precious metals, and the beginning of the modern era of token-based currency. The Washington quarter design, unchanged from 1932 through 1965, bridged these two worlds, carrying forward familiar face into a new economic reality. Today, the 1965 quarter is valued more for its story than its scarcity. It is a common date in the Washington quarter series, yet it marks one of the most important turning points in U.S. coinage. Collectors who build date sets or typesets of Washington quarters always include it, as it represents the very first clad quarter, the first of the modern era. While the vast majority are worth only 25 cents, the few surviving mint state gems and rare silver transitional eras hold special places in numismatic collections. For many, even a worn 1965 quarter is a tangible link to a dramatic moment in American coinage history, when tradition gave way to practicality and a new chapter in the story of U.S. money began. The 1968 United States quarter dollar is part of the long-running Washington quarter series, first introduced in 1932 to honor the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. By 1968, this coin had already become a staple of American currency, widely used in everyday transactions, and it reflects an important transitional period in U.S. numismatic history. On the obverse, the coin carries a familiar portrait of George Washington, designed by sculptor John Flanagan, which had been in use since the series began. Washington's left-facing bust dominates the design, his stern yet dignified expression capturing the statesmanlike qualities that made him a central figure in America's founding. Above the portrait appears the bold inscription Liberty, a foundational ideal of the United States, and just to the left of Washington's profile lies the national motto, "In God We Trust," which by the mid-20th century had become a permanent fixture on all circulating coinage. At the bottom, beneath Washington's chin and neckline, the date 1968 is clearly displayed, marking the year of issue. Unlike the quarters struck in Denver and San Francisco that year, coins struck at the Philadelphia Mint in 1968 bear no mint mark, since Philadelphia did not begin consistently using the P mint mark on quarters until 1980. This absence of a mint mark identifies the piece as a Philadelphia issue, giving it a place in the broader numismatic landscape of the late 1960s. On the reverse, the design continues with Flanagan's heraldic eagle motif, which had served as the standard imagery for Washington quarters for decades. The eagle, a national symbol of freedom and strength, is depicted perched on a bundle of arrows, its wings stretched wide as though in vigilant readiness. The arrows symbolize defense and military preparedness, while directly beneath them rests an olive branch, representing peace and diplomacy. This duality of strength and peace captures the essence of the United States self-image during the Cold War era of the late 1960s, when the nation sought to maintain a global balance between military might and diplomatic influence. Surrounding the eagle are inscriptions that reinforce the coin's authority and purpose. United States of America arches across the top of the reverse, affirming its origin. Beneath that is a motto, E pluribus unum, Latin for out of many, one, expressing the unity of the states. And at the bottom, in bold capital letters, is a denomination quarter dollar, making the coin's value unmistakable. In terms of composition, the 1968 quarter reflects a fundamental change in U.S. coinage that had taken place just 3 years earlier. From 1932 through 1964, quarters were composed of 90% silver and 10% copper, giving them intrinsic value beyond their face denomination. However, the Coinage Act of 1965 eliminated silver from circulating dimes and quarters due to the rising market price of silver and the resulting coin shortages. Thus, by 1968, quarters were being struck in the new copper-nickel-clad composition, consisting of outer layers of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core. The new clad quarters had the same silvery appearance but were lighter in intrinsic value. The 1968 quarter weighs 5.67 grams, has a diameter of 24.3 millimeters, and features a reeded edge, a traditional detail that originated in earlier centuries to discourage the shaving or clipping of precious metal coins. The change to clad coinage was one of the most consequential shifts in U.S. coin history, and the 1968 quarter represents one of the early years of this modern composition. Historically, the 1968 Philadelphia quarter was struck in very large numbers for circulation, with over 220 million pieces minted, ensuring widespread availability. This was also the first year that the U.S. Mint resumed placing mint marks on coins after their temporary removal during the 1965 to 1967 coinage crisis, although Philadelphia quarters of this date still carried none. The San Francisco Mint also reintroduced proof sets in 1968, with proof quarters struck in copper-nickel-clad for collectors, but all proof coin from this year bear an S mint mark. Thus, the 1968 Philadelphia quarter belongs firmly to the category of circulation strikes intended for everyday commerce rather than collector-focused issues. In circulation, the 1968 quarter became part of daily life in the United States at a time when coins were still heavily used for vending machines, telephones, toll booths, and everyday retail purchases. Today, most examples from circulation show moderate to heavy wear, with Washington's hair detail flattened, the eagle's feathers less distinct, and the surfaces dulled by years of handling. These circulated pieces are worth only their face value of 25 cents. For collectors, the interest lies primarily in higher-grade examples. Mint state specimens, with full original mint luster and sharp strike, are more desirable, though they remain relatively common due to the high mintage. Only examples graded at the very highest levels, such as MS-67 or MS-68, become scarce and command noticeable premiums on the numismatic market. Errors and varieties, such as double dies, off-center strikes, or planchet flaws, are especially prized by collectors and can significantly increase the value of a 1968 quarter, though such pieces are rare and must be authenticated carefully. From a numismatic perspective, the 1968 quarter is less about rarity and more about historical significance. It represents the early clad era, the reintroduction of mint marks, and the continuation of the Washington quarter's dominance in U.S. coinage until the arrival of the 50-state quarters program in 1999. While most 1968 quarters in circulation today are common and worth no more than their face value, uncirculated or error examples hold greater interest. For collectors assembling complete data and mint mark sets of Washington quarters, the 1968 Philadelphia issue is essential, not for its scarcity, but for the story it tells about the evolution of American coinage in the mid-20th century. The 1985 D United States quarter dollar, minted in Denver, is a coin belonging to the Washington Quarter series, a type that has been an enduring part of American coinage since its introduction in 1932 to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. On the obverse of the coin, the central feature is a left-facing portrait of George Washington, the first president of the United States, which was originally designed by sculptor John Flanagan and has been retained with only minor modifications for decades. Above Washington's head appears the word liberty, a central theme in American numismatic and political history, symbolizing the nation's foundation on freedom and democratic values. To the left of Washington's portrait, in smaller lettering, is the American national motto, "In God We Trust," adopted officially in the mid-20th century and continuously inscribed on all U.S. coinage as a statement of faith and cultural identity. Beneath Washington's portrait appears the date of minting, 1985, which identifies a specific production year, and just above the date, slightly to the right, is a mint mark D, indicating that this coin was struck at the Denver Mint in Colorado, one of the major production facilities of U.S. coinage. The Denver Mint in this era produced quarters for general circulation in large numbers, ensuring that these pieces entered everyday commerce across the nation. The reverse of the 1985 D quarter retains a classic heraldic eagle design, also crafted by John Flanagan. The reverse motif features a boldly spread American eagle with its wings extended wide, perched upon a bundle of arrows, a traditional symbol of defense and readiness to protect the nation. Below the arrows lies an olive branch, representing peace, and the juxtaposition of these elements reflects a balance of strength and diplomacy that the United States has sought to project throughout its history. The inscription United States of America arches along the top rim of the reverse, affirming the coin's issuing nation, while directly beneath it in slightly smaller letters is the enduring motto E pluribus unum, a Latin phrase meaning out of many, one. This phrase highlights the unity of the states within the federal system. Centered at the bottom of the reverse design is a denomination inscription $quarter, which explicitly declares the coin's face value of 25 cents. The bold lettering and structured layout of the reverse give the coin both a formal and practical appearance, underscoring its role as a widely used medium of exchange. From a historical perspective, quarters struck in 1985, including those from Denver, were part of the regular circulation coinage rather than any special commemorative series. During this year, the United States Mint did not produce quarters for collectors in silver or proof versions outside of the standard mint and proof sets, which were available directly from the mint. The circulation strikes from Denver, marked with a D, were produced in large quantities, well over 500 million, meaning that the 1985 D quarter is common and easily obtainable today. Its composition was the same as all quarters struck after 1965, a copper-nickel-clad construction, with outer layers of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core. This composition was adopted after silver was permanently removed from circulating quarters in 1965, reflecting economic shifts and the rising value of silver bullion. The coin has a standard weight of 5.67 grams, a diameter of 24.3 millimeters, and a reeded edge, which historically served both to discourage clipping and to provide a tactile recognition feature. In terms of its usage, the 1985 D Washington quarter would have circulated widely in the everyday economy of the mid-1980s, a time when cash transactions were still dominant, long before the rise of digital payments. These coins were encountered daily in vending machines, payphones, and retail transactions, embedding themselves into the lived experiences of millions of Americans. Today, most surviving examples of the 1985 D quarter remain in circulated condition, often showing moderate wear, surface marks, or loss of luster, which is typical for coins that were used heavily in commerce. Collectors who seek these coins often desire specimens in uncirculated, mint-state condition, with sharp details and full mint luster. Such high-grade examples can be found, though they are not particularly rare due to the massive minted figures, yet they carry more numismatic interest compared to their well-worn counterparts. From a collector's standpoint, the 1985 D Washington quarter holds more historical than monetary value, as it represents a common piece of circulating coinage from a transitional period in U.S. numismatic history, just before the dramatic changes brought by the state quarters program launched in 1999. While most 1985 D quarters in circulated condition are worth only their face value of 25 cents, mint-state examples can command slightly higher prices depending on the grade, eye appeal, and any interesting minting anomalies. Varieties or errors, such as off-center strikes, double dies, or planchet flaws, are the main exceptions, as these can be significantly more valuable to collectors. Nonetheless, even an ordinary 1985 D quarter can carry sentimental value for collectors who assemble year-by-year sets or those who appreciate a connection to everyday life in the United States during the 1980s.